So far, Lewis doesn't claim to have found the God of Christian theology, only a something, more like a mind than matter, that presses upon us from within. He reminds us not to accept soft or sentimental talk about God, but to look honestly at the law within us. Could this moral urging be the whisper of something greater? If so, what could it mean for how we live? Follow the channel and stay with us for the next chapter, where we continue the search, not for wishful thinking, but for real truth. Until then, what do you think lies behind the universe? In this thoughtful chapter, Lewis gently guides the reader through one of philosophy's oldest and deepest questions. What lies behind the universe? He begins with an observation about the so-called laws of nature. For non-human objects, stones, trees, the stars, these laws may be nothing more than descriptions of how things behave. But when we turn to human beings, the situation changes. In us, there seems to be not just a pattern of behavior, but a sense of how we ought to behave. A moral law that exists above and beyond the facts of what we actually do. This moral law, Lewis argues, is not something we invented. Nor is it easily dismissed. Even when we try to forget it, it presses upon us, reminding us of our obligations. That inner compulsion to do right and the discomfort we feel when we do wrong points to a truth deeper than mere instinct or social habit. And this, he suggests, may be our first clue to something beyond the material world. Lewis then lays out two major views of the universe. The materialist view holds that matter and space simply exist, have always existed, and operate according to blind physical laws. Life, in this view, is an accident of chemistry and chance, a rare and unrepeatable fluke. The religious view, by contrast, holds that what lies behind the universe is more like a mind, something conscious, with preferences and purposes that created the world, and perhaps even designed it to produce creatures like itself, creatures who think, reason, and wonder. He stresses that these two views have coexisted throughout history, and that science, for all its power and usefulness, cannot settle the question. Science, Lewis says, observes and measures behavior. It can describe how things work, but cannot answer why anything exists in the first place, or whether any hidden purpose lies behind the facts it records. And here Lewis makes a quiet pivot. If there is something behind the universe, it must reveal itself in some other way, not as one of the observable facts, but as something that speaks from within. And this is precisely what we find in ourselves. We are not just things to be studied from the outside. We are the thing being studied. In our own experience of moral awareness, we come across something inexplicable, something that feels like a message, a call, a direction. To make the point clearer, Lewis offers a simple analogy. Imagine someone watching a postman delivering identical envelopes to many houses. You know what's inside the envelopes only because you've received one yourself. You can't open the others, but you infer their contents from your own. In the same way, Lewis suggests, we cannot open stones or stars to see if they contain moral truths, but we can open ourselves. And what we find is a message, a sense of being guided by something greater than ourselves. He warns his readers not to jump too quickly to religious conclusions. I am not yet within 100 miles of the God of Christian theology, he writes. So far, he is only acknowledging a mysterious something that seems to direct the universe and that speaks to us through the moral law. It feels more like a mind than like matter, simply because matter does not give instructions. But he is cautious. He is not offering emotional reassurances or sugary sentiment. He is offering a slow, deliberate line of thought, one that begins not in scripture or sermons, but in the honest observation of what it means to be human. The chapter ends not with a claim, but with an opening. If there is a mind behind the universe, can we know more about it? What would it mean if this presence is not only real, but personal? Those questions are left for the next step of the journey. For now, Lewis asks the reader to stay curious, stay honest, and above all, stay open. There are moments in every life when one pauses and quietly wonders, is there more to this than meets the eye? It may happen while watching someone instinctively choose honesty over gain, or a child comforting a stranger out of pure compassion. It's in such moments that C.S. Lewis's profound observation rings true. The law of human nature must be something above and beyond the actual facts of human behavior. In this simple yet powerful assertion, Lewis invites us to look beyond the surface of human conduct. He reminds us that morality isn't just a record of what people happen to do. It's a compass pointing toward what they ought to do. That distinction, though subtle, changes everything. When we study nature, rocks, stars, even the movement of tides, we see laws at work. But those laws are descriptive. They tell us what is. Gravity does not choose, it compels. But with humans, there's an entirely different dimension at play. We not only act, but we judge those actions. We praise kindness, condemn cruelty, feel guilty when we fall short. Why? Not because someone is watching, but because something inside us knows. Lewis isn't romanticizing humanity. In fact, he's being rigorously honest. He knows that people often fail to live up to the moral standard. That's precisely his point. If morality were just a product of social habit or instinct, we wouldn't feel remorse when we violate it. Yet we do. He writes as one who understands the weary complexity of life, of middle age. When a person has seen enough to know how often they stumble, and how deeply they still care about walking upright. This inner law, this moral pressure, doesn't scream. It whispers. And still, its authority is unlike anything else we experience. It's not external, like traffic rules or tax deadlines. It's internal, persistent, and, at times, uncomfortable. As Lewis notes, we are under a law, not one we wrote, but one that seems to be written into us. For the thoughtful reader, especially one in their middle years, this reflection is not abstract. It's lived. It echoes in the quiet regret of things said in haste. It resonates in the pride of a decision made with integrity, even when no one noticed. It hums beneath the surface of parenting, marriage, aging, and letting go. And so, Lewis leads us gently but firmly to a deeper truth. Morality cannot be reduced to biology or chance. It transcends human behavior. It does not merely describe what we do, it prescribes what we should do. That should, so often dismissed in the name of freedom or progress, may in fact be our most human note. Is it not striking that in a universe governed by impersonal forces, humans feel the weight of personal responsibility? That, of all creatures, we alone feel obligated to something unseen? Lewis doesn't rush to name this something just yet. He isn't asking us to leap to religion. He's asking us to look inward with honesty, to admit that within us lies a law that we neither created nor can fully escape. And from that realization comes a quiet but stirring invitation. If the law exists, and we know it does, what or who gave it to us? This is the doorway through which Lewis gently walks us, not into dogma, but into wonder. There are few metaphors as quietly elegant as the one C.S. Lewis uses here. An image that speaks not only to the mind, but also to the heart of anyone who has ever longed to make sense of life. The only packet I am allowed to open is man, and when I do, I find that I am under a law. He could have chosen a grand statement, something cosmic or dramatic, But instead, he speaks of a packet, something personal, something addressed. And that is no accident. Lewis understands that most people, especially in the second half of life, no longer seek grand theories. They seek truth they can hold in their hands, truth that feels delivered to them. And so he invites the listener into this gentle unwrapping. Science, Lewis says, gives us data. It opens telescopes to the stars and microscopes to the atom. It explains what things do, but it cannot tell us why they are there or why we care. The universe, for all its wonder, does not write us letters. But there is one envelope we're allowed to open: ourselves. He's not being poetic for the sake of sentiment. He is being honest. Man, he says, is the one subject we know from the inside. And when we look within, honestly, quietly, beyond pride or pretense, we do not just find appetites or instincts. We find something more, an ought, a command, a silent law that is always there, always waiting. It does not shout, it rarely compels, but it speaks nonetheless. And the more one has lived, the more one has noticed it. Sometimes as a voice we wish we could ignore, other times as the very compass that saved us from ourselves. Middle age, perhaps more than any other season, reveals the truth of this law. We have had enough time to act against it, to feel the guilt. We've also had moments of courage when we listened to it, and the quiet peace that followed. This inner law is not imposed by culture or convenience. As Lewis says, it is not something we invented. It is something we discover. And here lies the brilliance of the metaphor. The universe is full of packets we cannot open, mysteries we can only observe from afar. But this one packet, the self, opens to reveal that we are not our own authors. We are under a law, not a legal code in a book, but a living code inscribed within. Some may find this troubling, that we are not entirely free, but Lewis offers it as a gift. If there is a law within us, perhaps there is also a lawgiver, someone who has written to us not just with commands, but with care. Like any letter, its purpose is connection. He doesn't claim that the law proves God, not yet. But he does ask us to look closely at what we do know, and not to ignore it. Because in the only case where we can truly look from the inside, our own hearts, we find a hint of a larger handwriting. That is where his message quietly lands. What if this law we discover is not random? What if it's personal? And if so, who sent it? I am not yet within 100 miles of the God of Christian theology, and all I have got to is something which is directing the universe. Before reaching this line, Lewis has already invited the reader into a journey of thought, not faith. He does not open with doctrines or declarations, but with questions. Questions about human behavior, moral obligation, and the nature of the universe. And now, here, he pauses. It is not a dramatic climax, but a moment of clarity. He says, gently but firmly, I am not yet within 100 miles of the God of Christian theology, and all I have got to is something which is directing the universe. It is a disarming admission. In an age when voices often claim absolute truth or reject all meaning, Lewis stands in the middle with something far rarer: intellectual humility. He does not pretend to know more than he knows, nor does he ask the reader to leap ahead with him. He names only what he feels he has honestly encountered: a guiding presence, a directing force, not a bearded God on a throne, not yet, just a something. And for those in midlife who have lived long enough to know that certainty can be a brittle thing, this approach resonates. It mirrors the way real insight unfolds, not all at once, but in layers. Lewis's voice is not that of a preacher on a pulpit. It is more like a friend in quiet conversation, someone who leans in and says, "Look, I'm not trying to convert you. I'm just telling you what I've come to see so far." This something, he implies, is not an object of scientific measurement. It is not one of the facts in the universe, but something behind them. It presses on human beings from within, through that strange sense of moral duty that we cannot invent or escape. And Lewis is careful. He does not ask us to assign this force a name it has not yet revealed. Instead, he encourages patience, attentiveness, and a willingness to be surprised. In a world of instant answers and shallow belief, his method is radical. Take your time. Think slowly. Observe carefully. Don't believe because someone tells you to. Believe because something within you begins to awaken. What makes this quote so compelling is not just its content, but its tone. There is no fear, no manipulation, just a calm presence of thought. And for many readers, that presence creates space to breathe, to reflect, to wonder. They may not be ready to speak of God, but they might be ready to admit there is something more, something that nudges, that calls, that holds them to account. And that is where Lewis leaves us, not with a conclusion, but with a doorway. He does not ask us to walk through it yet, but he does light a small lamp by its side. And in the next chapter, he will return to ask, what kind of something might this be? Can we know it better, or is it destined to remain unknown? That is the path ahead. But for now, we sit in the soft stillness of a question, and perhaps that is enough. So far, Lewis doesn't claim to have found the God of Christian theology, only a something, more like a mind than matter, that presses upon us from within. He reminds us not to accept soft or sentimental talk about God, but to look honestly at the law within us. Could this moral urging be the whisper of something greater? If so, what could it mean for how we live? Follow the channel and stay with us for the next chapter, where we continue the search, not for wishful thinking, but for real truth. Until then, what do you think lies behind the universe?